I didn't know that the night meant to celebrate 8 years of my marriage would become the night it ended. At that moment, I still believed I was walking into a quiet betrayal, not a carefully planned one. I still thought love could be explained away by stress, ambition, or timing. I was wrong. What I was about to witness wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, made repeatedly, confidently, and right in front of me. I own the restaurant where this story begins. I built it with my hands, my savings, and years of exhaustion. On its opening night, every table was full, every dish perfect, every detail exactly as I had imagined. Tonight was supposed to be special for another reason too, my 8th wedding anniversary. My husband and I had a reservation for the best table in the house, table 23. I chose it myself. But instead of sitting there, I was at the bar. I wasn't meant to be. I was supposed to be fixing my lipstick, smoothing my dress, preparing to greet the man I had supported through every rise of his career. Instead, I was watching him from a distance, holding a glass of champagne that tasted wrong the moment it touched my lips. He was seated at table 23. He wasn't alone. The woman across from him leaned in when he spoke. He smiled the way he used to smile at me, slow, confident, intimate. I told myself it was work. He worked in politics. Dinners happened. Meetings ran late. I had made excuses like this for years, but anniversaries were different. At least, they were supposed to be. 30 minutes earlier, I had received a message from him while standing in my own restroom. Need to adjust dinner plans. Bringing a colleague, you understand, happy anniversary, I'll make it up to you. I stared at those words longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand the sentence, but because I finally understood him. I didn't reply. I changed my plans instead. I asked the hostess to keep his table. I asked the bartender for champagne. I asked myself not to cry. From the bar, I could see everything. His hand resting too comfortably near hers, her laughter coming too easily. The kind of closeness that doesn't belong to coworkers. I scanned her face, trying to recognize her. I couldn't, but she looked like someone who knew she belonged where she was sitting. Then I saw it. On her wrist. A thin line of diamonds caught the light as she moved her hand. The pattern was familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I leaned forward slightly, my grip tightening around the glass. I knew that bracelet. I hadn't seen it in years. My husband reached for her hand and adjusted it gently, like it mattered, like it meant something. I stayed where I was. I didn't stand up. I didn't walk over. I didn't make a sound. Because in that moment, I realized this night wasn't about an affair. It was about theft. And whatever he thought he was celebrating at my table, he had no idea what he had just started. That was only the beginning. I stayed at the bar longer than I planned, not because I was frozen, but because I needed to understand what I was seeing. If I walked over too soon, emotions would lead the moment. I didn't want emotions. I wanted clarity. They talked easily, too easily. He leaned back in his chair, relaxed, unguarded. This wasn't a man worried about being seen. This was a man who believed he was safe. She listened closely, nodding at the right moments, laughing softly, touching her glass when he touched his. Their rhythm wasn't new. It had been practiced. I replayed the message in my head. You understand? No explanation, no apology, just certainty. The waiter poured wine I had personally selected for my anniversary. He described it the way I had taught him. My husband nodded along, pretending he knew the story behind it. He didn't look toward the bar once, not even out of habit. That hurt more than I expected. I checked the reservation system on the tablet behind the hostess stand. I already knew what I would find. His name, her name. The reservation had been changed earlier in the evening. Not last minute, planned, deliberate. I returned to the bar and took a slow breath. My phone buzzed again. Running a little late, don't wait up. I almost laughed. I watched as she reached across the table and touched his wrist. He didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his hand so his fingers brushed hers. That was when I stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding. No colleague behaves like that. No married man allows it unless he wants it. The bracelet flashed again under the lights. I remembered when I gave it to him for safekeeping. I had trusted him with it without hesitation. I had trusted him with everything the same way. I scanned the room again, forcing myself to stay grounded. That's when I noticed the man at the far end of the bar. He wasn't watching the room. He was watching them. His jaw was tight, his shoulders stiff. He looked away when she laughed, then looked back as if he couldn't stop himself. Something clicked. I didn't know who he was yet, but I knew this. He didn't look curious. He looked hurt. I ordered water. I needed my head clear. The pieces were there, I just hadn't arranged them yet. At the table, dessert menus arrived. My husband glanced at his watch, impatient. He always did that when he wanted to leave but didn't want to seem rude. She leaned closer and whispered something. He smiled again, that same smile. The one I used to believe was only mine. I realized then that I wasn't watching the end of something. I was watching the middle. And the middle is where the truth hides best. I didn't move yet. Not because I was afraid. Because timing matters. And I was done reacting. I couldn't look away from her wrist. Every time she moved her hand, the diamonds caught the light, and with each flash another memory surfaced, ones I hadn't thought about in years. I didn't need to inspect it closely. I didn't need confirmation. I knew it the way you know your own name. That bracelet wasn't something you confuse with another. He leaned toward her again, lowered his voice, and said something that made her smile. Then I saw his fingers brush the bracelet, adjusting it as if he had placed it there himself. That small gesture did something irreversible inside me. It told me this wasn't borrowed. It wasn't accidental, it was intentional. I remembered the last time I'd asked him about it. He told me it was locked in his office safe. He said it was safer there than at home. He said he was protecting it for me. I believed him. At the bar, the man at the end shifted in his seat. He finished his drink and ordered another without taking his eyes off their table. When the woman laughed again, he flinched. Not loudly, not visibly, just enough that I noticed. That's when I understood. We were watching the same thing from opposite sides of the room. I stood and walked toward the hostess stand, keeping my steps slow, controlled. I checked the reservation details again. Her full name was listed this time. I searched it on my phone. It didn't take long. Married. I looked back at the man at the bar. The last name matched. The betrayal didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt heavy, layered, structured. This wasn't two people crossing a line. This was two lives being rearranged without consent. At the table, my husband lifted his glass and said something that made her look down at her wrist again. I watched her fingers trace the diamonds. She admired it. She believed it belonged to him. That was the part that mattered. Because if he could give away something that wasn't his, what else had he already taken? I thought about the papers he'd asked me to sign weeks earlier. The way he rushed me, the way he said it was routine. I hadn't questioned him. I rarely did. The man at the bar stood up suddenly, then sat back down as if he'd changed his mind. He wasn't ready. Neither was I. Not yet. I returned to my seat and stared straight ahead, forcing myself to stay still. If I confronted him now, he'd lie. He always did when surprised. He'd twist it, downplay it, turn it into something I'd be expected to forgive. I didn't want forgiveness. I wanted the truth in its full shape. Dessert arrived. They didn't touch it right away. They were too busy talking, too comfortable, too confident. I checked the time. I didn't feel weak anymore. I felt alert. Whatever this was, it didn't start tonight, and it wasn't going to end quietly. I took one last look at the bracelet on her wrist and made a decision. I wasn't going to ask for it back. I was going to take it. I didn't move toward the table yet. I needed to be certain about one thing first, how far this had already gone. Affairs thrive in secrecy, but planning leaves traces. And my husband was never careful when he thought he was in control. I watched him closely. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't checking the room. He wasn't scanning for me. That told me everything I needed to know. He didn't think I mattered in this moment, not as a wife, not as a risk. The woman leaned in and said something serious. His smile faded for half a second before returning. He nodded, slow and deliberate. That nod wasn't reassurance, it was agreement. I reached for my phone again and pulled up the documents he had emailed me weeks ago. I hadn't looked at them properly then. I trusted him. I trusted the tone of his voice more than the words on the page. Now I scrolled with purpose. There it was. Language that shifted ownership. Clauses that softened consent. Words that looked harmless unless you read them twice. He hadn't forged anything. He hadn't needed to. He had relied on my distraction, my exhaustion, my faith. The bracelet wasn't the first thing he took without asking. At the table, he reached into his jacket and placed something on the cloth between them. An envelope. She didn't open it. She slid it toward him instead. He glanced inside and tucked it away quickly. Money. I felt the last trace of doubt disappear. This wasn't just personal. This was coordinated. The man at the bar stood again. This time, he walked closer, stopping a few seats away from me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence confirmed what I already knew. He was watching his life unravel the same way I was. I turned toward him slightly. "That's your wife," I said quietly. He didn't deny it. "She told me she had a work dinner," he replied. "So did he." We didn't look at each other after that. We didn't need to. The truth was sitting comfortably at table 23, enjoying dessert paid for by lies. I checked the time again. The bill would come soon. That mattered. I wanted them seated, still, cornered by their own confidence. My phone vibrated. Another message from my husband. "Where are you?" I smiled for the first time that night. I didn't answer. Instead, I signaled the bartender and asked him to slow the service at table 23 when the check was requested. Calmly, casually, like it was routine. Because for me, it was. I stood up, smoothing my dress, steadying my breath. The anger wasn't loud anymore. It had sharpened into something precise. He thought he had rewritten the story. He forgot one thing. I was the one who owned the setting. And I was about to step back into the scene. I didn't walk to the table immediately. I waited until he noticed me. That mattered. I moved just enough for him to catch my reflection in the glass behind the bar. His smile paused mid-sentence. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if his mind needed a second to accept what it was seeing. Then came the adjustment, the practiced expression he used in public. Calm, pleasant, in control. He believed he still had time. I walked toward table 23. Each step felt deliberate, not heavy, not rushed. He straightened in his chair. The woman followed his gaze and looked up at me. Confusion crossed her face first, then curiosity. She didn't recognize me. That almost made it worse. "Melody," he said, standing halfway. "There you are." There it was, that tone, as if I were late, as if I owed him an explanation. I didn't sit. I looked at her instead, enjoying dinner. She hesitated, then smiled politely. "It's wonderful. He said this place was special." "It is," I replied, "especially tonight." My husband laughed softly, too quickly. "I was just telling her about the opening. Things got busy, you know how it is." I turned my attention back to him. "I do." Silence stretched longer than he liked. The bracelet rested against her wrist, unbothered, untouched by guilt. He watched my eyes flicker to it. His jaw tightened for the first time. "You should join us," he said. "We were just about to." "I won't stay," I interrupted. "I just wanted to see something up close." Her smile faltered. "See what?" I reached out before either of them could stop me. I took her wrist gently, lifting it just enough for the light to catch the diamonds. Her breath caught. My husband froze. "This," I said quietly. He swallowed. "Melody." "You told me it was in your office," I continued, still holding her wrist. "You said it was safe." She looked between us now, confusion turning into unease. "Is there a problem?" I released her hand and stepped back. "No, not yet." I turned to him again. "We'll talk later." He nodded too fast. "Of course, this isn't the place." I smiled. "I agree." I walked away without another word. Behind me, I felt the shift. The confidence cracked. He leaned toward her, whispering quickly. She nodded, her hand moving instinctively to the bracelet as if to protect it. That gesture sealed it. Back at the bar, the man was standing beside my seat now. "He looks nervous," he said. "He should be." "What are you going to do?" I met his eyes, exactly what they don't expect. At table 23, my husband glanced toward the bar again. This time, his smile didn't return. He knew something had changed. He just didn't know how much. He sat beside me without asking. Not close enough to intrude, not far enough to pretend this was coincidence. We both kept our eyes on the same table. "They've been like this for months," he said quietly. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't ask how he knew. People only speak like that when the proof has already hurt them. "What's your name?" I asked. "Stephen." I nodded once. "She told you tonight was work." "Yes." "So did he." We watched as my husband leaned toward her again. He spoke fast now, urgent. She listened, tense. The comfort between them had thinned. They were no longer enjoying themselves. They were managing damage. "That bracelet," Stephen said. "She came home wearing it last week. Said it was a gift from him, a thank you." I felt something settle into place. Clean, final. "She said it was his," he continued. "Family piece." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Stephen exhaled slowly. "I checked our accounts yesterday. Money's missing, not small amounts." That was it, the shape of it, the reason for the confidence. The envelope, the documents, the timing. "They're not just together," I said. "They're building something." Stephen's jaw tightened. "With our lives." At the table, dessert plates were cleared. My husband glanced at his watch again. He raised a hand for the check. I caught the bartender's eye and gave a small shake of my head. "Delay." Stephen noticed. "You planned this." I adjusted, I said. "There's a difference." He watched me for a moment. "You're not surprised." "I was," I replied, "earlier." We stood at the same time without discussing it. I didn't need his help yet, but I needed him close. The check didn't arrive. My husband frowned. He signaled again. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Stephen leaned closer. "What happens when they try to leave?" "They won't," I said, "not without paying." "And after?" I looked at the bracelet on her wrist one last time. "After, they tell the truth, or it tells itself." My phone buzzed again. "Where did you go?" "Come back." I typed a reply and deleted it. Then I put the phone face down. At the table, my husband stood halfway, scanning the room. His eyes landed on Stephen. Recognition flickered. Not certainty, suspicion. He sat back down. The room felt tighter now, quieter. They were trapped by their own confidence, by a bill they couldn't ignore, by two people who finally stopped pretending. Stephen's voice dropped. "If this explodes, it explodes for everyone." I met his gaze. Good. Because whatever they thought they were controlling tonight had already slipped out of their hands. And it wasn't going back. They waited too long for the check. That's when panic showed itself. My husband leaned back in his chair, pretending patience, but his foot moved under the table. The woman stopped talking. Her fingers tightened around her glass. The bracelet slid slightly on her wrist, and she adjusted it without thinking. Stephen noticed too. "She only does that when she's nervous," he said. At the table, my husband raised his hand again, sharper this time. The waiter approached, spoke softly, and nodded. No check, just reassurance. My husband's smile thinned. He turned to her and whispered something. She shook her head immediately, not gently, firmly. Whatever he suggested, she didn't like it. I stood. Not to confront them, not yet. I walked past their table slowly, close enough for him to smell my perfume, close enough for her to recognize my face again. I didn't look at either of them. I didn't stop. But I felt it. The shift. Stephen stayed where he was, watching. My phone buzzed again. "This isn't funny." "Come here." I ignored it. Behind me, I heard my husband stand. Melody. I turned just enough to meet his eyes. "Sit down." He froze. That wasn't a request, he knew it. I walked to the hostess stand and opened the reservation log again. I didn't need to. I wanted him to see me doing it. He watched from across the room, his face tight, calculating. Stephen joined me. "What are you checking?" "Names," I said. "Patterns." The reservation wasn't the first one. They'd been here before. Same table, same time, different excuses. I closed the screen. At table 23, the woman stood abruptly. "I need the restroom." Stephen followed her with his eyes. "She won't go far." "She won't leave without him," I said. My husband remained seated, staring straight ahead now. The confidence was gone. This was the version of him I rarely saw, the one without a script. I walked back to the bar and sat down, calm still. When the woman returned, she leaned in close to him. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. Her face said enough. This wasn't part of the plan. He reached for her hand again. She didn't take it. That was new. Stephen's voice dropped. She's realizing she's not protected. She never was. The waiter approached their table again. This time, my husband snapped something under his breath. The waiter nodded once and walked away. Stephen looked at me. They know. Yes, I said, and now they're deciding who goes down first. At the table, my husband reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He typed fast, then stopped, looked up, met my eyes across the room. For the first time that night, he looked afraid. I raised my glass slightly in his direction. Not a toast. A warning. Whatever story he had been telling himself was over. And the next move was his. That's when he made the wrong one. He stood up suddenly. Not calmly, not confidently. Chairs don't scrape unless someone forgets where they are. Conversations nearby slowed. A few heads turned. He noticed and adjusted his posture instantly, smoothing his jacket, forcing a smile that no longer fit. I need to speak with you, he said, walking toward me. Stephen didn't move, but his attention sharpened. I stayed seated. You're busy. My husband lowered his voice. This is not the time. You decided the time, I replied, when you chose the table. His eyes flicked to Stephen for half a second too long. Recognition landed. Hard, he hadn't expected this variable. I don't know what you think you saw, he said. I saw enough, I answered. The woman stayed seated. She didn't follow him. That told me everything. My husband leaned closer. You're embarrassing yourself. I smiled. You're confusing silence with ignorance. He straightened. We'll discuss this at home. There is no home, I said. Not anymore. His jaw tightened. You don't mean that. I do. Stephen stood now, calm, visible. My husband's eyes locked onto him. Who are you? Stephen answered before I could. Her husband. That word landed heavy. The woman stood abruptly. Stephen, please. He raised a hand. Don't. The room felt smaller. My husband looked between us, his mind racing. This wasn't damage control anymore. This was collapse. You're overreacting, my husband said quickly. This is being taken out of context. Stephen laughed once. You transferred money from my company. Silence. My husband didn't deny it. He looked at me instead. You went through my things. You gave them to me, I replied. You just didn't read them carefully. The woman stepped back from the table. I didn't know you'd bring him here, she said to my husband. His head snapped toward her. You said he was out of town. She didn't answer. That was the moment it broke. The waiter approached again, holding the check. He placed it on the table gently, as if it mattered. My husband stared at it like it was a verdict. I'll take care of this, he said, reaching for his wallet. Stephen spoke calmly. So will the police. My husband froze. This doesn't have to go that far, he said, his voice low, urgent. We can talk. We are, I replied. The woman's voice shook. You said you had everything handled. I did, he snapped, until you panicked. Until he panicked. I stood. The bracelet caught the light as I reached for her wrist. Give it back, I said. She hesitated, looked at him. He didn't help her. Slowly, she unclasped it and placed it in my hand. That was when he knew. He had lost more than control. He had lost the ending. And there was nothing left to negotiate. The moment the bracelet touched my palm, the balance shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like a door locking from the inside. I closed my fingers around it and stepped back. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I felt his attention collapse inward, felt the calculation fail. The woman stood still, hands empty now, eyes darting between us. Whatever story she had believed, it was gone. She wasn't chosen. She was exposed. Stephen picked up the check and looked at it without comment. This covers dinner, he said, not theft. My husband laughed once, sharp and forced. You can't seriously think. I don't think, Stephen replied. I checked. That word landed harder than any accusation. Nearby tables had gone quiet. Not openly watching, but listening. People always listen when control slips. My husband turned to me again. You're doing this on purpose. Yes. His voice lowered. You'll regret this. I met his eyes. You already did. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He was searching for leverage, for sympathy, for the version of me that still explained things away. He didn't find her. The woman took a step toward him. Say something. He didn't. That was when she understood what I had already accepted. She wasn't his partner. She was convenient, replaceable, a risk he misjudged. Stephen spoke again. My lawyer has our account records, transfers, dates, amounts. My husband's face hardened. This isn't your business. It became my business when my company paid for your ambition. He turned sharply to the woman. You said it was covered. She shook her head. You said it was temporary. The lie collapsed between them, thin and useless. I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist. It settled there like it had never left, like it had been waiting. The waiter returned with a pen. My husband hesitated, then signed. His hand shook. He noticed, I noticed. Security moved closer, not touching, just present. This doesn't end here, my husband said quietly. No, I agreed. It starts. He looked around once more. No allies, no exits that didn't cost him something. The woman reached for her purse. Stephen didn't stop her. He didn't help her either. My husband stayed seated. That was the final image I took with me. Not anger, not shouting. Just a man who thought he owned the room, realizing he never did. I turned away first. And I didn't look back. I didn't leave the restaurant, not yet. I walked to the private office near the kitchen and closed the door behind me. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The shaking came later, when everything was already decided. My phone lit up immediately. Calls, messages, missed apologies wrapped in urgency. I can explain. Please answer. You're misunderstanding everything. I didn't open any of them. Outside, I knew what was happening without seeing it. He would be sitting there, replaying every move, every word, trying to figure out where he lost control. He would tell himself this could still be fixed, that I was emotional. That time would soften me. He always believed time worked in his favor. Stephen knocked once and stepped inside. She left. I nodded, and him. Still there, talking to security. He's asking for you. I'm busy. Stephen watched me for a moment. You planned this longer than tonight, didn't you? No, I said. I adapted faster. Another knock, this one louder. Melody, my husband's voice came through the door, controlled, careful. We need to talk, alone. I didn't answer. Stephen stepped back. I'll wait outside. When the door opened again, it wasn't him. It was security. He wants 5 minutes, they said. I stood, give him one. He walked in like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just lost everything that mattered. He straightened his jacket, met my eyes, and tried to soften his voice. You blindsided me. You underestimated me. He exhaled slowly. This didn't have to be public. You made it public. I was protecting us, he said. My career is not my responsibility. His expression hardened. You're throwing away years. I'm taking them back. Silence stretched. He studied my face, searching for doubt. He didn't find it. You'll regret this, he said again. I nodded. You keep saying that. He stepped closer. I can still fix things, the house, the money, her, all of it. That's the problem, I replied. You think everything is yours to fix. He stopped. I opened my desk drawer and placed the bracelet on the surface between us. You didn't lose this, I said. You stole it. His mouth opened, closed. There's nothing left to discuss, I continued. My lawyer already has the documents, so does his. He looked at the door, then back at me. This isn't over, he said. I met his gaze. It is for me. Security stepped in. He left without another word. That was the last time he tried to control the story. And outside that office, consequences were already moving faster than he could. I didn't go far. I stopped near the bar, close enough to see what happened next. I wanted to know how he handled the moment after control slipped. That's when people show their real selves. He stayed seated longer than he should have. His eyes followed me, then shifted to Stephen, then to the woman who now stood apart from him. She checked her phone repeatedly, messages unanswered, plans collapsing in real time. Security didn't touch him, they didn't have to, presence was enough. He stood again, slower this time, careful. He tried to step away from the table, toward the exit. One of the security guards moved slightly, not blocking, redirecting. My husband stopped. "You can't hold me here," he said. "No one is," the guard replied. "You've settled the bill, you're free to leave." He looked past them, at me. I didn't move. He realized something then. Leaving wasn't escape. Leaving meant facing what came next without a shield, without me smoothing things over, without silence protecting him. Stephen approached the woman. "We're done talking tonight," he said. "Our lawyers can finish it." She nodded numbly. She didn't look at my husband. That hurt him more than anything else. "You're making a mistake," my husband said to me one last time. "You don't know how this will play out." "I know enough," I replied. He stepped back, scanning the room as if hoping for interruption. There was none. Conversations resumed slowly. People returned to their meals. The moment passed them by. But not him. He walked toward the door alone. The woman followed a few seconds later, keeping distance between them. Stephen stayed behind, steady, present. "I'll send everything," he said quietly. "Accounts, records, messages." "I'll do the same," I replied. We didn't shake hands, we didn't need to. When the door closed behind them, the restaurant exhaled. Service continued, plates moved, glasses filled. I stayed where I was, bracelet secure on my wrist, phone vibrating again in my pocket. This time, I read the message. "We need to talk." I typed back. "No, we're done." Then I turned the phone off. Because the night wasn't over yet. And neither were the consequences. I thought the hardest moment would be watching him walk out. I was wrong. The hardest part came after, when the room pretended nothing had happened, and I had to decide what to do with the silence he left behind. Stephen stayed. He didn't ask why I hadn't left too, he understood. Some endings need witnesses. My phone stayed off. I didn't want updates. I didn't want excuses. Whatever damage was spreading outside these walls could wait. Tonight wasn't about closure. It was about confirmation. Stephen broke the silence. He's going to blame her. "Yes," I said, "and she'll blame you." "And you." I smiled faintly. "He'll blame me last, when there's no one else left." Security returned to their posts. Staff moved like nothing had cracked. That was my fault. I had trained them well. Stephen's phone buzzed. He read the screen, then showed it to me. Bank alerts, more transfers, dates going back months, numbers stacking up. "It's worse than I thought," he said. "It always is." At that moment, my phone lit up again, powered back on now, deliberate. A single message from a number I didn't recognize. "You humiliated him." I didn't reply. Another message followed. "He won't let this go." I locked the screen. Stephen noticed. He won't. I know. We sat there not speaking, letting the reality form its shape. Affairs end quietly. Schemes don't. This wasn't about love. It was about leverage, and leverage doesn't disappear when exposed, it fights back. A server approached me carefully. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I said. "Finish service." She nodded and walked away. Stephen leaned back. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "he starts making calls." "To who?" "Anyone who will still listen." Stephen nodded. "And you?" "I wait." "For what?" "For the first lie he tells after tonight." Stephen looked at me. "You're not afraid." "I was," I replied, before I saw how desperate he looked when he realized I wouldn't save him. Stephen stood. "I should go." "Be careful," I said. He paused. "You too." After he left, I stayed alone for a few minutes longer. Then I stood and walked through the dining room once. Everything was intact. The table, the chairs, the place where it all collapsed. I reached the bar and took a final look at the door. He thought leaving ended it. He was wrong. Because once control breaks, it doesn't come back quietly. And tonight was only the first crack. By morning, the narrative had already shifted. I didn't hear it from him. I heard it from a mutual contact who called too early and spoke too carefully. Concern wrapped in curiosity. Sympathy mixed with doubt. "He says you overreacted," the voice said, "that it was a misunderstanding." I thanked them and ended the call. The first story is always the test. It tells you how far someone is willing to go. Another message followed, then another, different people. Same tone, he was working fast, controlling angles, reframing facts before they hardened. I opened my laptop and reviewed the documents again. Clean, clear, dated. His confidence had relied on my inattention. That was his mistake. Stephen sent a message. He called my lawyer, denied everything, claimed authorization. I replied, "Good. Because denial creates records." Midday my lawyer called, calm, precise. "He's claiming the bracelet was gifted to him years ago," she said. I almost laughed. "That's useful," I replied. "He's placing it in his possession." A pause. "You're prepared for this to escalate?" "Yes." The next message came directly from him. "We need to present a united front." I didn't respond. Then, "Think about what this will do to both of us." Still nothing. Then the last one, sent too quickly, too raw. "You owe me." That was when I knew. People don't say that unless they believe it. By evening, the second story appeared. Softer, sadder. He was stressed, he was overwhelmed. He had made mistakes but meant no harm. He was being punished unfairly. That version spread faster. I didn't correct it. I waited. Stephen called. "She's claiming she didn't know the money wasn't approved." "That's her first story," I said. "It won't be her last." And him. He's still deciding who to sacrifice. Silence on the line. "Be careful," Stephen said. "He's cornered." "I know," I replied. "That's when people tell the truth by accident." That night, I returned to the restaurant after closing. I sat alone at the bar, not to drink, not to reflect, just to be present where it began. My phone buzzed once more. A number I recognized. "If you talk, I talk." I stared at the message. That wasn't a threat. That was an admission. I typed back one word. "Then talk." And for the first time since the night before, I smiled. Because the story was no longer his to control. And the next move would cost him more than silence ever did. He talked. Not to me, not to his lawyer, to someone who thought loyalty could still be bought. Stephen called just after midnight. His voice was tight. He reached out to one of our suppliers, asked questions he shouldn't know how to ask. I closed my eyes, which means he's fishing. He's trying to prove the transfers were business-related. Then he's desperate. Silence, then Stephen said he offered to make me whole, quietly. I laughed once. "With what?" "Future favors," Stephen replied. "Connections." There it was, the old currency. Promises that weren't his to keep. I sent Stephen a single message to forward if needed. "Put it in writing." An hour later it arrived, an email forwarded to both our lawyers. Polite, casual, careful, an offer to settle misunderstandings privately. A suggestion that public exposure would harm everyone involved. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession wrapped in confidence. My lawyer called immediately. He just admitted prior knowledge. "Good," I said, "let him keep going." By morning, the third story began circulating. This one was sharper, angrier. I was unstable. I was retaliating. I was using my business to humiliate him. I let it spread. At noon, Stephen sent another update. "She's cracking," he wrote. "She says he promised to protect her." "He always does," I replied, "until he doesn't." At 2, my lawyer forwarded a document, a draft statement he intended to release. Carefully worded, vague, defensive. It named no names and accepted no fault. At 3, Stephen sent a screenshot. A text from her. "He told me you approved everything." That was the moment. I forwarded it to my lawyer without comment. At 5, my phone rang, unknown number. I answered. "You think you've won," his voice said. "I haven't started," I replied. "You're destroying lives." "You did that," I said. "I'm just not cleaning it up." He exhaled sharply. "You're making enemies." I already had one. Silence stretched. "You don't understand how this works," he said finally. "I do," I replied. "You just forgot I was watching." He hung up. By evening, the fourth story began to form, this one fractured, inconsistent, different versions reaching different people. That's when I knew. He had chosen the wrong ally. And she was about to tell a better story than he ever could. She didn't call me. She went to Stephen. That mattered. Stephen texted only 3 words. "She wants immunity." I read it twice, then once more. I replied, "She wants safety." Minutes later he called. "She's scared," he said, "not of me, of him." I believed that immediately. "She says he coached her," Stephen continued. "What to say, what to delete, when to deny." I sat still, and now? And now he stopped answering. That was the pattern. He protected until it became inconvenient. Stephen lowered his voice. "She kept everything." That was the crack. Messages, transfers, drafts, notes, versions of stories that never matched. Proof doesn't shout, it stacks. "She wants to meet with her lawyer tomorrow," Stephen said, "with hours present." I closed my eyes briefly. He won't see that coming. "No," Stephen replied. "He thinks she's loyal." "She was," I said, until he let her hang. Stephen paused. "She said something else." "What?" "She said the bracelet wasn't the first thing." My hand tightened instinctively. "She said he'd taken items from your house before," Stephen continued. "Documents, originals, anything he thought had value." I felt cold, not surprised, just clear. "He always liked leverage," I said. That night, my lawyer sent one sentence. "We're no longer negotiating." An hour later, his lawyer responded. "We advise discretion." I smiled at the screen. By morning, the silence broke. A formal notice arrived, an investigation, financial irregularities, campaign funding flagged, accounts frozen pending review. Stephen called again. "She gave them everything." "Good," I said. "She says she thought she was helping him," he added, "that it would all be temporary." "It always is," I replied, "until it isn't." That afternoon, my phone rang again, his number this time. I answered. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I stopped protecting you. You turned her against me. You abandoned her first." He exhaled sharply. "You think this ends me?" "I think it reveals you." A pause, then quieter. "We could still settle." "No," I said, "you're done asking." His voice hardened. "You'll regret pushing this." I replied calmly, "You already taught me what regret looks like." The call ended. By evening, the fifth story began forming. This one blamed everyone. That's when I knew it was over. Because when people stop choosing a story and start scattering blame, they've lost control. And the truth was no longer waiting. It was moving. The investigation didn't arrive loudly. It didn't need to. Silence does more damage when people are watching. By morning, calls stopped coming in his favor. The tone changed. Questions replaced concern. Support turned into distance. People who once answered immediately let it ring. Stephen forwarded me an update. "They want timelines, originals, not summaries." I replied, "They'll get them." By noon, his campaign office released a statement, carefully worded, temporary leave, cooperation promised, no admission, no apology. That lasted 4 hours. Then another document surfaced, one he forgot existed, an internal message, clear dates, clear intent, not sent to me, sent to someone who kept receipts. Stephen called again. "They've suspended funding." "That was fast," I said. "They're moving quicker than expected." They always do when the numbers line up. At 3, his lawyer called mine, not to negotiate, to ask what I wanted. My lawyer didn't hesitate. Full disclosure. That was the moment they stopped pretending this was damage control. My phone buzzed once. "You didn't have to destroy everything." I stared at the message. Then I typed back. "You destroyed it. I stopped lying about it." No reply came. That evening, the woman's name appeared where his once did. Documents referenced her testimony, her version, her evidence, not emotional, methodical. He wasn't prepared for that. Stephen texted again. He's blaming her now. I responded. Of course he is. At 9, my lawyer called. He's requesting mediation. Too late, I said. A pause, this will get public. I know. And you're okay with that? Yes. Because once a story escapes, you don't chase it. You let it run. By midnight, the 6th story surfaced. This one claimed betrayal by everyone: advisors, staff, family, everyone except himself. That's when I knew it had reached the end. When accountability disappears, collapse follows. I stood in my kitchen and placed the bracelet on my wrist again. It felt heavier now, not with history, with closure. Somewhere, he was rewriting his future with excuses. And somewhere else, the truth was already being archived. Permanent. Unchangeable. Waiting for daylight, the headline didn't use my name. It used his. That was intentional. By morning, the investigation was no longer quiet, not loud either, precise, specific, names, dates, amounts, the kind of details that don't fade with denial. Stephen sent one message. They executed warrants. I didn't ask where. I already knew. My phone rang from a blocked number. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. I answered the 3rd time. His voice was different, not angry, not sharp, thin. They took my phone. I stayed silent. They froze everything, he said. Accounts, assets, even the campaign funds. Silence again. You could still help, he added quickly. You know people, you could clarify things. I spoke slowly. Clarify what? That you misunderstood, that this got out of hand. I let the pause stretch. You're still trying to trade me, I said. A sharp inhale. I'm trying to survive. So was I replied, for years. His voice dropped. If this goes public, I'm finished. It already is, I said. He laughed once, a hollow sound. You think this ends with me? I think it starts with you. The call ended. Stephen updated me an hour later. She gave them the backup drive. That was the last defense gone. By afternoon, his name disappeared from official listings. Websites updated quietly, titles removed, committees distanced themselves, not announcements, edits. Erasure is louder than scandal. Another message arrived from an unknown number. He's saying you planned this. I replied. I plan to tell the truth. The evening brought the first request for comment. I declined. Silence lets others speak badly without contradiction. It also lets facts travel unchallenged. At night, Stephen called once more. He tried to meet her, he said. She refused. Good. He says she ruined him. She told the truth, I replied. There was a pause. He asked if you'd testify against him. I didn't hesitate. Yes. That answer traveled faster than anything else. By midnight, his lawyer withdrew. That's when I knew. Not because of the investigation, not because of the evidence, but because the people who once believed in him stopped answering his calls. And without an audience, a liar loses his power. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Tonight brought something better. Silence. And for the first time since that table I slept, the silence didn't last. It never does when someone is desperate to rewrite the ending. I woke to messages stacked without emotion. Court notices, requests for confirmation, a single update from my lawyer marked urgent. He's filed a motion naming you. I read it once, then again. He wasn't defending himself anymore. He was redirecting damage. Stephen called minutes later. He's claiming you controlled the finances. That's a lie, I said. Yes, Stephen replied, and an easy one to prove. That was the problem. Easy lies don't last. By noon, the document was circulating among attorneys. It accused me of influence, pressure, manipulation. It painted me as strategic, calculated, dangerous. I didn't object. Because strategy leaves records. And manipulation leaves patterns. Stephen forwarded a message from his lawyer. This weakens his position. It did more than that. It exposed him. At 2, my lawyer called. He submitted the wrong timeline. I smiled. He always rushed. He placed you in meetings you were never present for, she continued. We can prove it. Then let him keep talking. By 4, a new filing arrived. His side attempted to withdraw the claim. Too late, it was already logged. Stephen's voice was calm when he called again. She testified this afternoon. I closed my eyes. What did she say? Everything. That word carried weight. She described instructions, scripts, signals, how he corrected her phrasing, how he trained her to minimize exposure, how he promised protection. Stephen paused. She said the bracelet was proof. My grip tightened slightly. She said he liked using things that weren't his, that it made him feel powerful. I said nothing. By evening, his narrative collapsed completely. Contradictions surfaced. Statements failed to align. His own words undermined him. At 8, my lawyer forwarded a message. They want your statement tomorrow. I replied, I'll be there. That night, my phone buzzed one final time. A single sentence. You took everything from me. I typed back slowly. You gave it away. Then I blocked the number. Because the version of him that existed in that message was already obsolete. And the truth he tried to erase was now permanent. Filed. Dated. Unchangeable. Waiting to be read aloud, I didn't rehearse. Truth doesn't need practice when lies have already collapsed. The room was quiet when I sat down, not tense, focused. Every word mattered now, not because I was afraid, but because he was. They asked when I first noticed changes. I answered simply, dates, messages, actions, no emotion attached, facts don't shake. They asked about the bracelet. I placed it on the table. I explained when I entrusted it to him, why, where he claimed it was kept, when I saw it again, on someone else's wrist. They didn't interrupt. They asked about the documents. I explained how they were presented, how timing was used, how trust replaced scrutiny. They nodded. They asked if I believed his actions were intentional. Yes, I said, because they were consistent. That word mattered. They showed me transcripts, his words, his instructions, his contradictions. I didn't react. I had already heard them through actions. Then they asked the question he was hoping they wouldn't. Did he benefit? Yes. How? Money, access, control. Silence followed. Then the last question. Would you have stayed silent if this hadn't been exposed? No. That answer ended the session. Outside, my lawyer spoke softly. They have enough. I nodded. He knew that. Stephen waited nearby. He didn't speak right away. They issued formal charges, he said finally. Against him, I asked. Yes. Not relief, not satisfaction, just confirmation. Stephen hesitated. He tried to withdraw his statement. Too late. He asked to speak to you. No. Stephen nodded. I told them that. That afternoon, the update went public. Not dramatic, direct, clear violations, clear misuse, clear consequences. His name appeared once more. Attached to facts. Not stories. My phone stayed silent. No apologies, no threats. Just absence. That night, I stood alone in my kitchen and removed the bracelet, placing it carefully where it belonged. This wasn't victory. It was finality. Because once the truth is spoken on record, it doesn't belong to anyone anymore. Not even him. And tomorrow, the consequences would begin without me. The world moved on faster than I expected. Not emotionally, logistically. Calendars updated, meetings canceled, names removed from invitations. Systems adjust quickly when someone becomes a liability. He didn't fall, he was replaced. Stephen sent one final update that morning. Bail was set. I didn't ask the amount. Another message followed. He asked if you'd come. I replied, no. Because presence can be mistaken for mercy. By afternoon, the 7th story appeared. Short-lived, anonymous, claimed political targeting, personal vendettas, convenient enemies. It didn't spread. People were tired of carrying his version. At 3, my lawyer called. He's contesting forfeiture. That won't last, I said. No, she agreed, it won't. I walked through the restaurant that evening while service was light. Staff spoke normally, customers laughed, plates moved, the space no longer carried his shadow. At table 23, a different couple sat. They looked relaxed, unaware, uninvolved. That felt right. Stephen came by later, not to talk about cases, not to update me, just to sit. They asked if I wanted to press additional charges, he said. And I said no, he replied. What mattered is already on record. I nodded, that's enough. We didn't discuss her. She had disappeared from both our lives. Sometimes people don't survive the truth even when they tell it. That night, I received one final message. From a new number. I never meant to hurt you. I read it once. Then I deleted it. Intent doesn't erase impact. And some messages arrive too late to matter. I turned my phone off and locked the door behind me. For the first time since the opening night, the place felt entirely mine. Not because he was gone, but because nothing of him remained. Tomorrow, the final paperwork would be signed. The story would be sealed. And there would be no appeals left that required my attention. Because the end doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives when there's nothing left to say. The final document arrived without ceremony. No cover letter, no apology, just signatures, dates, and a confirmation number that closed everything he could still touch. When I signed, nothing dramatic happened. No release, no weightlifting, just completion. That mattered. Because endings that hurt the most are quiet. Stephen texted once. It's done. I replied. I know. That was the last message we exchanged about him. The charges moved forward without my involvement. Hearings happened without my presence. His name appeared less frequently, then not at all. Public interest fades when there's no mystery left. People don't linger on exposed truth. I returned fully to my life without announcing it. No statements, no interviews. Silence had already said enough. One evening, I stood alone at table 23 after closing. The same table, same placement, different meaning. I didn't sit, I didn't need to. I placed the bracelet on my wrist and looked at it once. Not for memory. For ownership. My phone buzzed for the first time in days. An unknown number, one message. I hope you're happy. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I typed back. I'm free. I blocked the number. That was the last connection cut. Later that night, I locked the restaurant and walked home alone. Not lonely, not guarded, just present. There were no more stories to correct, no lies left to chase. Everything he tried to control had moved on without him. That was the real consequence. Not loss. Replacement. I turned off the lights, closed the door, and didn't look back. Because the night I stood at the bar, watching him give away, what wasn't his had already decided the ending. I just made it official. You have reached the end of the text.